Commander Zethkar stared at the dead control panel in front of him and felt his heart sink. The lights on his cargo ship had gone out one by one over the past hour, and now even the emergency power was failing. His jump drive had exploded in a shower of sparks 3 days ago, leaving him stranded in the empty space between star systems. The Vrexian trader pulled his thick coat tighter around his scaled body. The ship's heating had stopped working yesterday, and the cold was seeping into his bones. He looked at the small device showing his remaining air supply. 2 days, maybe 3 if he barely moved. His own people were too far away to help. The nearest Vrexian outpost was months of travel, and no one knew where he was. Zethkar had been trading in this part of space for 20 years. He knew the routes, the dangers, and the different alien species he might encounter. The humans were new to this area, having only discovered faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. Most older species thought humans were too young and primitive to matter much. They were known to be aggressive and emotional, quick to fight but also quick to forgive. Zethkar had traded with them a few times and found them strange but honest in their deals. He activated his distress beacon one more time, though he held little hope. Who would risk their own mission to help a stranded alien trader? In his experience, most species would demand payment first, and he had nothing valuable enough to trade for a rescue. Hours passed in the growing cold and darkness. Zethkar began to accept that he would die alone in this empty corner of space, far from his homeworld and family. He thought about his mate and their 3 young ones waiting for him to return from this trading run. They would never know what happened to him. Then his communication system crackled to life. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth research ship Endeavour. We have received your distress signal. What is your current status? Zethkar's hands shook as he reached for the communication controls. This is Commander Zethkar of the Vrexian cargo vessel Bright Prophet. My jump drive has failed and my life support systems are dying. I have perhaps 2 days of air remaining. There was a brief pause. Commander Zethkar, we are changing course to reach you. Our engineer estimates we can be there in 18 hours. Please conserve your energy and stay warm. We are coming to help. Zethkar stared at the communication device. They were just coming. No discussion of payment. No questions about what he could offer in return. He had dealt with humans before, but this seemed too good to be true. Captain Chen, he said carefully, I should inform you that I have limited resources to compensate you for this rescue. My cargo was damaged when my drive failed. Another pause, then Captain Chen's voice came back, sounding confused. Commander, we're not looking for payment. You're in trouble and we can help. That's enough reason for us. 18 hours later, the human ship Endeavour appeared like a bright star against the black space. It was smaller than Zethkar's cargo vessel, clearly built for research rather than trade. He watched through his small viewport as it approached carefully and attached itself to his ship's docking port. The humans who came aboard were unlike any aliens Zethkar had encountered in his decades of trading. Captain Chen was a small woman with graying hair who immediately began checking on his health and asking what he needed. Dr. Marcus Webb, their chief engineer, started examining his failed systems without even being asked. The third crew member, Lieutenant Torres, brought warm food and medical supplies. Your jump drive took quite a hit, Dr. Webb said after an hour of investigation. He was a tall, thin man who spoke with excitement about technical problems. The main coupling is completely burned out, and you've got cascade failures throughout the system. This is actually fascinating. I've never seen Vrexian engineering up close before. Zethkar explained the situation. The coupling you mentioned cannot be repaired with standard parts. It requires a Vrexian manufactured component that can only be found at our major stations. I fear my ship is beyond saving. Dr. Webb rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Well, we can't just leave you stranded. Let me see what we can improvise. Human engineering might not be as advanced as yours, but we're pretty good at making things work with whatever we have. Over the next 3 days, the human crew worked tirelessly on Zethkar's ship. They shared their food, gave him warm clothes, and treated him like an old friend rather than a stranded alien. Dr. Webb spent hours studying Vrexian technical manuals that Zethkar provided, learning how the systems worked. Lieutenant Torres helped repair his heating system using human components. Captain Chen checked on him regularly, making sure he had everything he needed. Why are you doing this? Zethkar asked Captain Chen on the second day. Your research mission must be important, yet you have abandoned it to help a stranger. Captain Chen looked surprised by the question. Because you needed help and we could provide it. Our research can wait. Your life can't, but I am not even human. My species and yours barely know each other. So, you're a living being in trouble. That's all that matters to us. Dr. Webb managed to create a hybrid coupling using human power cells and Vrexian control circuits. It wasn't pretty and it wouldn't last forever, but it would get Zethkar home safely. The human engineer refused to accept any payment for the rare metals used in the repair. Consider it a gift between friends, Dr. Webb said with a smile. Besides, I learned more about Vrexian engineering in 3 days than I could have in years of study. That's payment enough for me. When Zethkar was ready to leave, the humans loaded his ship with extra food, medical supplies, and spare parts. They gave him detailed instructions for maintaining the hybrid coupling and frequency codes to contact human ships if he ran into trouble again. Safe travels, Commander, Captain Chen said as they prepared to part ways. And remember, if you ever need help again, any human ship will assist you. As Zethkar activated his repaired jump drive and watched the human ship disappear into the distance, he felt something he had never experienced in all his years of trading. These humans had risked their own mission, spent their own resources, and given their time and expertise to save a complete stranger. They asked for nothing in return except his safety. In Vrexian culture, as in most alien societies, such generosity was unheard of between species. Trade was based on fair exchange. You gave something to get something of equal value. The idea of helping someone simply because they needed help, with no expectation of return, was completely foreign to him. But the humans had done exactly that. They had saved his life and asked for nothing but his friendship in return. As his ship jumped toward home, Zethkar realized he had witnessed something remarkable. These young, supposedly primitive humans had shown him a kind of goodness that his ancient, advanced civilization had never developed. They had treated him not as an alien stranger, but as a fellow being deserving of help and kindness. He would never forget this experience, and he knew he would spend the rest of his life trying to understand how an entire species could be so genuinely good to others. The humans had saved more than his life. They had shown him a completely different way of thinking about relationships between species. What Zethkar didn't realize as he traveled home was that his rescue would become the first small pebble in an avalanche that would reshape the entire galaxy. Zethkar could not stop talking about the humans when he returned to Vrexian space. At first, his fellow traders listened politely but with obvious doubt. The story seemed too strange to believe. No species helped others without expecting something in return, especially not aliens they barely knew. You must have misunderstood their intentions, said Vextal, an old friend who had been trading for 50 years. Perhaps they were studying you for some research project, or they wanted information about our trade routes. No, Zethkar insisted. They asked for nothing. They gave me supplies, repaired my ship, and sent me on my way with only good wishes. I offered them valuable information about profitable trade routes, but they refused to take it. The other Vrexian traders exchanged glances. This kind of behavior was so unusual that it sounded like fiction. But Zethkar was known for his honesty, and his repaired ship clearly showed evidence of human engineering modifications. Word of the strange rescue began to spread through the trading networks that connected different species across the galaxy. At first, it was just an interesting story that traders shared over drinks, but then other similar stories began to surface. A Zelati mining crew reported that human tourists had organized a rescue mission when their asteroid facility collapsed, working for days to dig out survivors and refusing any payment. A Kethran diplomat told of human security guards who had thrown themselves into danger to protect him from assassins, saying they couldn't just stand by and watch. Ambassador Lyra Quintel of the Galactic Mediation Council first heard these stories during a routine diplomatic meeting. As someone whose job was to understand the relationships between different species, she found the reports fascinating and troubling. If they were true, they suggested that humans operated according to social rules that no other known species followed. Quintel was a member of the Sylvan species, known for their logical approach to problems and their detailed record-keeping. She decided to investigate these human behavior reports systematically. Over the next several months, she collected hundreds of similar stories from across known space. The pattern was always the same. Humans encountered other species in trouble and immediately offered help, often at risk to themselves. They shared resources freely, provided aid without being asked, and refused payment or favors in return. Most strangely, they seemed to do this consistently, not just occasionally. What made the behavior even more unusual was that humans appeared to have no cultural or religious requirement to act this way. Other species that showed unusual generosity usually did so because of specific beliefs or social systems. The healer caste of Meridian Prime helped others because their religion required it. The collective species shared resources because their minds were linked. But humans seemed to help others simply because they felt it was the right thing to do. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a human xenosociologist working on the research station New Harmony, noticed something strange happening in her data. Human trade ships were reporting unusually favorable treatment at alien ports. Vrexian traders were offering what they called friendship discounts to human vessels. Other species were seeking out human trading partners and offering better deals than they gave to their own kind. Vasquez began tracking these reports and realized that every case could be traced back to some previous interaction where humans had helped members of that species. The Vrexian discounts all stemmed from Zethkar's rescue story, which had spread throughout their trading networks. The favorable treatment from other species always had similar origins. It's like we're getting paid back for kindnesses we don't even remember doing, Vasquez reported to her research team. Every time a human helps someone, word spreads through their entire species' communication networks. They're building a reputation for us that we didn't even know we were creating. Captain Chen, the same officer who had rescued Zethkar, found herself confused by the reception her ship received at alien ports. Everywhere they went, aliens treated them with unusual respect and generosity. Port authorities expedited their paperwork, suppliers offered goods at reduced prices, and local officials invited them to diplomatic functions usually reserved for much more important visitors. I don't understand it, Chen told her crew after a particularly welcoming reception at a Thektar station. We're just a research vessel. Why are they treating us like visiting dignitaries? Dr. Webb, who had repaired Zethkar's ship, shrugged. Maybe they've heard good things about humans. Word travels fast out here. What they didn't realize was that the story of their rescue of Zethkar had become something of a legend in Thektar culture. The warrior species, who valued honor and courage above all else, had been deeply impressed by humans who risked their own mission to save a stranger. Thektar commanders now spoke of human courage as an example for their own troops. Meanwhile, Ambassador Quintel's investigation had attracted attention from the highest levels of galactic government. The Galactic Council, which governed relationships between species, was concerned about reports of humans gaining influence through what some members called manipulation through false generosity. No, species acts without ulterior motives, declared Counselor Vorth of the hegemony of Korth during a closed session. These humans must be planning something. Perhaps they are trying to create debt relationships with other species to use for future leverage. But Quintel's research suggested otherwise. She had interviewed dozens of humans involved in these incidents, and their motivations appeared to be exactly what they claimed: simple desire to help others in need. Psychological scans showed no deception, no hidden agendas, no strategic thinking beyond immediate problem-solving. The evidence suggests, Quintel reported to the Council, that humans genuinely help others without expecting anything in return. This behavior appears to be consistent across their entire species and is not driven by religious, political, or economic considerations. The Council chamber fell silent. Such behavior was unprecedented in galactic history. Every known species operated on some form of reciprocal exchange system. Even the most altruistic species had cultural or biological reasons for their generosity. The idea that an entire species would help others simply because they felt it was right challenged fundamental assumptions about how intelligent life operated. Back in human space, trade officials were puzzled by reports of alien species offering unsolicited gifts and favorable trade agreements. The colony of New Geneva received an entire shipment of advanced medical equipment from Meridian Prime, with a note saying it was a gift to honor the human nurse who comforted our dying child with such kindness. No one at New Geneva could identify which nurse the aliens meant or when this incident had occurred. It was simply one of thousands of small acts of kindness that humans perform naturally, without thinking they were creating galactic reputation. President Maria Santos of the United Earth Federation called a meeting of human diplomatic and trade officials to discuss these unusual developments. Reports were coming in from across human space of alien species offering unprecedented cooperation and generosity. "I don't understand what's happening," President Santos admitted to her advisors. "According to our Alien Affairs Department, we've somehow become the most popular species in the galaxy, and nobody can explain why." Dr. Vasquez, who had been invited to brief the government on her research, presented her findings. "Mr. President, it appears that our natural tendency to help others has created an exponential reputation effect. Every time we help someone, they tell others of their species. Those stories spread and influence how that entire species treats all humans. Are you saying that our people being naturally helpful has somehow made us galactic celebrities?" asked the president. "In a way, yes. But more than that, we've accidentally created the largest goodwill network in recorded galactic history. Species that have never trusted each other are now working together because they all have positive experiences with humans. What none of them realized was that this was only the beginning. The simple act of helping others, which humans did without thinking, was about to reshape the entire balance of power in the galaxy." Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the observation deck of the research station New Harmony, watching ships from dozens of different species dock at the station's ports. 6 months ago, New Harmony had been a quiet research outpost on the edge of human space. Today it looked like the busiest trading hub in the galaxy. "Another Silthani vessel requesting permission to dock," announced Lieutenant Park from the communications station. "They're carrying what they call gifts of crystal technology for the human researchers." Vasquez shook her head in amazement. The Silthani were crystalline beings who rarely interacted with carbon-based life forms. They considered most biological species too primitive and short-lived to be worth their attention. Yet here they were, offering their advanced nanotechnology to humans in exchange for what they called expressions of biological creativity, human art and music. "What did we do to earn their attention?" asked Dr. Rodriguez, the station's new xenocultural specialist. 3 months ago, a human cargo captain named Williams shared his personal music collection with a Silthani trader who was bored during a long cargo transfer, Vasquez explained. The Silthani had never experienced music before. Williams spent hours explaining rhythm, melody, and emotional expression. Now the entire Silthani collective wants to understand human artistic concepts. This was becoming the pattern everywhere in human space. Small acts of kindness, friendship, or simple human decency were creating massive responses from alien species. What humans considered normal behavior was being treated as miraculous generosity by the rest of the galaxy. The colony of New Geneva had become a case study in this phenomenon. In addition to the medical equipment from Meridian Prime, they had received agricultural technology from the Harvest Worlds, defensive systems from the Thektar Empire, and educational materials from the Archive Keepers. All of these gifts could be traced back to individual humans who had helped members of those species. Colony Administrator Jackson was overwhelmed by the sudden wealth flowing into his settlement. "We've gone from struggling to maintain basic services to having the most advanced infrastructure in human space," he reported to Earth. "The problem is, we don't know why most of this is happening. The reason, according to Vasquez's research, was that humans had accidentally discovered the most powerful force in galactic politics: authentic kindness. Every species had stories of human helpfulness, and these stories were spreading through their cultures like wildfire. The Thektar Empire, known for their warrior culture and military strength, had declared humans to be honorary warriors after a series of incidents where humans had shown courage in defending alien civilians. General Korthavel himself had announced that any human vessel in Thektar space would receive military protection as if they were Thektar citizens. This protection had been earned when a human freighter captain named Torres had refused to abandon a Thektar refugee camp during a pirate attack. Instead of fleeing to safety, Torres had landed his ship and helped evacuate civilians, taking enemy fire to protect alien children he had never met before. The humans showed the heart of a true warrior, General Korthavel had declared. Any species that produces such individuals deserves our respect and protection. Similar declarations were coming from species across the galaxy. The healer caste of Meridian Prime had named humans honorary healers and were sharing their medical knowledge freely. The archive keepers had granted humans access to their vast libraries of galactic history and technology. Even the mysterious shadow traders had begun offering humans access to their secret trade routes. Ambassador Quintel watched these developments with fascination and growing concern. Her investigation had revealed that humans were gaining influence at an unprecedented rate, but not through any deliberate strategy. They were simply being themselves, and the galaxy was responding with overwhelming gratitude. The humans have created what we might call a gratitude cascade, she explained to the Galactic Council. Each act of kindness creates multiple allies, who then spread positive reports about humanity, which influences how their entire species treats all humans. The effect is exponential. Councillor Vorth of the Korth hegemony was less impressed. This cannot be natural behavior. No species acts with such consistent altruism without ulterior motives. The humans must be planning something. But Quintel's research had found no evidence of human planning or strategy. Interviews with hundreds of humans involved in these incidents showed that they genuinely helped others simply because they felt it was right. They were often surprised by the grateful responses they received and had no idea they were building galactic reputation. The situation became more complex when other species began trying to copy human behavior. The Vrexian Trade Consortium announced a new policy of generous assistance to stranded vessels, hoping to build similar goodwill. The Kethran Diplomatic Corps began offering unsolicited aid to other species. These efforts failed completely. Other species approached generosity as a calculated strategy, and their artificial kindness was easily detected by those they tried to help. The genuine, unconscious nature of human altruism could not be replicated through policy decisions. They're trying to manufacture what humans do, naturally, observed Dr. Vasquez, but authentic kindness can't be faked. The recipients can sense the difference between genuine care and strategic generosity. Meanwhile, human space was becoming overwhelmed by the influx of alien visitors and gifts. The colony ship New Horizons, traveling to establish a new settlement, found their destination already occupied by grateful alien species, who had built advanced facilities as a welcoming gift. For the human colonists, Captain Morrison of the New Horizons was baffled by the reception. They've built cities for us, installed the latest technology, and are offering to help us establish our colony. All because some human somewhere helped someone from their species. The economic effects were becoming visible throughout the galaxy. Trade routes were being altered to favor human ships, which received priority docking, reduced fees, and preferential treatment at alien ports. Human colonies were receiving so much unsolicited aid that their economic development was accelerating, far beyond normal expectations. President Santos called an emergency meeting of Earth's leadership to address what news media had started calling the gratitude problem. Human space was receiving so much alien attention that it was becoming difficult to manage. We have entire alien fleets arriving at our colonies with gifts, reported Admiral Hayes. The traffic control around Earth alone has tripled in the past month. And these aren't just trade visits. These are species making pilgrimages to meet the helpful humans they've heard about. Dr. Vasquez presented her latest findings to the meeting. The cascade effect is still accelerating. Each positive interaction creates multiple new relationships, which lead to more positive interactions. We've accidentally created the largest alliance network in galactic history, and it's growing exponentially. But what do they want from us? Asked President Santos. Nothing, apparently. That's what makes this so unprecedented. They're responding to genuine kindness with genuine gratitude. They want to be our friends because we've shown them friendship. What the human leadership didn't yet realize was that not everyone in the galaxy was happy about humanity's sudden rise in influence. While most species were responding to human kindness with gratitude, others were beginning to see humanity's success as a threat to the established galactic order. The Korth hegemony, in particular, was watching humanity's growing influence with increasing alarm. As one of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations, they had built their position through strength, cunning, and careful political maneuvering. The idea that a young species could gain more influence through simple kindness challenged everything they believed about how power worked. Commander Zethkar, now wealthy from the preferential treatment his rescue story had earned him, received a disturbing message from his intelligence contacts. Several powerful species were beginning to form a coalition to address the human problem before humanity's influence became too great to counter. As he prepared to send a warning to his human friends, Zethkar reflected on the irony of the situation. The humans had saved his life asking nothing in return, and now he might be the only one who could save them from the consequences of their own goodness. President Maria Santos stared at the holographic display showing ship traffic around Earth and felt overwhelmed. What had once been orderly lanes of human vessels and occasional alien traders now looked like a massive traffic jam of grateful species from across the galaxy. The Orbital Traffic Control Center was working around the clock just to prevent collisions. "Madam President," said Admiral Hayes, pointing to a cluster of red dots on the display, "we have 3 more refugee fleets requesting permission to enter human space. The Zelati Civil War refugees, survivors from the Kethran Revolution, and now displaced families from the Meridian conflicts. They all say they're coming to us because humans never turn away those in need." Santos rubbed her temples. The human reputation for helping others had created an unexpected problem. Every conflict in the galaxy was now sending refugees toward human space, believing that humans would automatically provide sanctuary and aid. While this was often true, human colonies were becoming overwhelmed by the numbers. "How many refugees are we currently hosting?" she asked. "Over 2 million across all our colonies," replied Dr. Vasquez, who had become the government's expert on what they now called the gratitude cascade. "Most colonies are at 3 times their planned population. New Geneva is running out of housing even with the alien-built facilities." The situation was becoming more complex by the day. Human space had become the galaxy's unofficial refugee center, diplomatic meeting ground, and pilgrimage destination all at once. Species that had been enemies for centuries were now forced to coexist in human colonies, united only by their shared gratitude toward humanity. Director Chen of Colonial Affairs brought up another pressing concern. "We're also seeing the emergence of human extremist groups who want to exploit our new status. The Humanity First movement is demanding tribute from alien visitors, claiming that grateful species should pay for the privilege of being in human space." This was exactly what President Santos had been afraid of. A small but vocal group of humans had begun to see their species' sudden influence as an opportunity for dominance, rather than friendship. They argued that humanity should leverage their goodwill advantage to expand their territory and power. "What's worse," continued Director Chen, "some criminals are now pretending to be human to gain trust from other species. We've had reports of pirates using false human identification to approach alien vessels, then attacking when their victims lower their defenses." Dr. Vasquez added her own troubling observations. "The galactic economy is being distorted. So many resources are flowing toward human space that traditional trade patterns are breaking down. Some alien governments are starting to complain that their citizens are neglecting local development to send gifts to humans." The irony was not lost on President Santos. Humanity's greatest strength, their natural tendency to help others, was becoming a source of galactic instability. The very quality that had earned them universal respect was now threatening to destroy the peace it had created. Ambassador Lyra Quintel arrived at Earth with an urgent message from the Galactic Council. As she entered the presidential briefing room, her usually calm demeanor showed signs of strain. "President Santos," she began without pleasantries, "we have a serious problem developing. A coalition of species led by the Korth hegemony is organizing what they call a correction to the current galactic situation." "What kind of correction?" Santos asked, though she feared she already knew. "They view humanity's influence as artificial and dangerous. Councillor Vorth has convinced several powerful species that humans are manipulating others through false kindness, and that this must be stopped before humanity becomes too powerful to control." Admiral Hayes leaned forward. "Are we talking about military action?" "Possibly," Quintel replied, "but more likely economic warfare first. They're planning to embargo human space, restrict access to critical resources, and pressure other species to stop their generous treatment of humans. They want to force humanity back to its proper place in the galactic hierarchy." President Santos felt a chill. The Korth hegemony was one of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations. If they decided that humanity was a threat, they had the resources to make life very difficult for human colonies. "How many species are supporting this coalition?" she asked. Currently, 7 major powers and perhaps 20 minor ones. But that could change quickly if they convince others that humanity is a threat to galactic stability. Dr. Vasquez studied the intelligence reports Quintel had brought. This is fascinating from a sociological perspective. We have species who are grateful to humanity, fighting against species who are threatened by humanity's success. Our kindness has literally divided the galaxy into opposing camps. The situation became more urgent when Commander Zethkar arrived on Earth with his own warning. The Vrexian trader whose rescue had started, the entire cascade was now wealthy and well-connected, enough to have access to high-level intelligence. My human friends, he said to President Santos and her advisors, I bring disturbing news. The Korth Coalition is planning to act soon. They have identified key human colonies that they believe can be pressured into renouncing their alien alliances. They want to prove that human kindness is just a strategy that can be abandoned when convenient. Which colonies? Asked Admiral Hayes. New Geneva, Harmony Station, and the mining colony at Titan's Edge. They believe that if they can force these settlements to reject alien aid and refugees, other humans will follow suit to avoid conflict. President Santos realized that humanity was facing its first major test since joining the galactic community. How they responded would determine not just their own future, but the fate of the unprecedented alliance network their kindness had created. The pressure was already showing effects. On the colony of Titan's Edge, local officials were receiving threatening messages warning them to expel their alien residents or face economic blockade. Some colonists were beginning to question whether hosting refugees was worth the risk of making powerful enemies. We're seeing fractures in human unity, reported Director Chen. Some colonies want to maintain our open-door policy, regardless of the consequences. Others are calling for a return to isolationist policies to avoid conflict. And a few are demanding that we leverage our influence to expand human territory before other species can stop us. Ambassador Quintel observed this internal human debate with great interest. This is the crucial moment, she told President Santos privately. How humanity responds to this crisis will determine what kind of galactic citizen you become. The Coalition expects you to either become aggressive in response to threats or to abandon the very principles that earned you respect. They cannot imagine a third option. President Santos called for an emergency session of the United Earth Federation and its colonial governments. Representatives from across human space gathered to debate their response to the growing crisis. The discussion revealed deep divisions in human opinion. We should use our influence while we have it, argued Representative Williams from the outer colonies. Humanity has a chance to become the leading power in the galaxy. If we don't take it, someone else will. That's exactly the kind of thinking that got us into this situation, countered Representative Zhang from New Geneva. Our strength comes from being genuinely helpful, not from trying to dominate others. But we can't just ignore threats against our people, insisted Admiral Hayes. If the Korth Coalition attacks our colonies, we need to be prepared to defend them. Dr. Vasquez raised a crucial point. Whatever we decide, we need to remember that the entire galaxy is watching. Our response will either confirm the Korth Coalition's claims that we're manipulative, or prove that our kindness is genuine even under pressure. As the debate continued, President Santos realized that humanity was at a crossroads. They could try to maintain their current path and risk being crushed by more powerful species. They could become aggressive and abandon the principles that had earned them respect. Or they could find a third option that no one else had considered. The decision they made would not only determine humanity's future, but could reshape galactic civilization itself. The young species that had accidentally created the largest alliance network in history was about to learn whether genuine kindness was strong enough to survive in a universe often dominated by fear and power. President Maria Santos stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Council, knowing that her next words would either save the fragile peace humanity had accidentally created or destroy it forever. The great chamber was filled with delegates from hundreds of species. Their attention focused entirely on the small human woman at the central podium. Behind her, holographic displays showed the current state of galactic civilization. Trade routes highlighted in blue showed the unprecedented cooperation between species that had never worked together before. Refugee movements in green demonstrated how human colonies had become safe havens for those fleeing conflict. Economic data revealed the massive shift in resources toward human space as grateful species shared their wealth and technology. And in red, the growing influence of the Korth Coalition, now comprising 15 major powers who viewed humanity's rise as a threat to galactic stability. Honored delegates, President Santos began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. We stand at a moment that will define the future of our galaxy. The question before us is not whether humanity deserves its current influence, but what kind of galaxy we all want to live in. Councillor Vorth of the Korth hegemony leaned forward in his seat, clearly expecting humanity to either surrender their influence or demand to keep it through force. Either response would prove his point that humans were just another ambitious species seeking power. The coalition has accused humanity of manipulating other species through false kindness, Santos continued. They claim that our actions are calculated to gain influence and that we will abandon our helpful nature once we have achieved dominance. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Many delegates had heard these accusations and were waiting to see how humanity would respond. Today, I am here to prove them both right and wrong, Santos said, causing confused silence to fall over the assembly. They are right that humanity's actions have dramatically changed the balance of power in the galaxy. Our influence has grown far beyond what any species our age should reasonably possess. Ambassador Quintel, watching from the diplomatic section, felt her heart sink. It sounded like Santos was about to concede to the coalition's demands. But they are wrong about our motivations, Santos continued. And I intend to prove that by proposing something that will shock both our allies and our critics. The president activated her personal display, showing a detailed document that had taken weeks to prepare with input from human colonies, alien allies, and neutral mediators. I propose the creation of the Universal Assistance Compact, Santos announced, a formalized system where all species contribute to and benefit from mutual aid based on their capabilities, not their current reputation or political status. The chamber erupted in confused discussion. This was not what anyone had expected. Under this compact, Santos explained as the noise died down, humanity would give up its privileged position as the galaxy's primary aid recipient. Instead, we would establish a structured system where any species in need could receive help from any species capable of providing it. Resources would be distributed based on need and ability, not on past favors or current relationships. Councillor Vorth stood up, his confusion evident. You are proposing to abandon the very advantages your species has worked to create? We are proposing to make those advantages available to everyone, Santos replied. The compact would establish mutual aid treaties, standardized refugee assistance protocols, and emergency response networks that any member species could access and contribute to. Dr. Vasquez, watching from the human delegation, smiled. This was the solution they had discussed, but weren't sure Santos would have the courage to propose. By offering to formalize and share their approach to helping others, humanity would be proving that their motivations were genuinely altruistic. The system would be administered by a joint council with representatives from all participating species. Santos continued. Humanity would serve as founding members but would have no special authority or privileges. The goal would be to create a galaxy where helping others is the norm, not the exception. The silence in the chamber was profound. No one had expected humanity to voluntarily give up their advantages. The coalition had prepared for human aggression or human withdrawal, but not for human generosity on this scale. Ambassador Quintel understood the brilliance of the proposal. If humanity had fought to keep their privileged position, it would have confirmed suspicions about their motives. If they had withdrawn from galactic affairs, it would have destroyed the cooperation network they had built. But by proposing to share their approach with everyone, they were demonstrating that their kindness was genuine. This is either the most naive proposal in galactic history, Councillor Vorth said slowly, or the most sophisticated political manipulation ever attempted. There is a third possibility, Councillor, said Ambassador Quintel, standing to address the chamber. Perhaps this is simply what genuine altruism looks like when applied to galactic politics. Over the following hours, debate raged through the chamber. Species that had benefited from human generosity spoke passionately in favor of the compact. Those who felt threatened by humanity's influence found it difficult to argue, against a proposal that would actually reduce human advantages. The breakthrough came when General Korthval of the Thektar Empire made an unexpected announcement. The military leader, whose species was known for valuing strength above all else, stood to address the assembly. The Thektar Empire supports the human proposal, he declared, causing gasps throughout the chamber. We have observed human behavior in crisis situations. Their courage and selflessness in protecting others, including our own people, has shown us a form of strength we had never considered. If they are willing to share this strength with the galaxy, we will stand with them. This declaration triggered an avalanche of support. Species after species stood to endorse the compact, many sharing stories of human kindness they had experienced personally. Even some members of the Korth Coalition began to waver, as they realized that opposing the proposal would mean arguing against organized galactic cooperation. The final vote was closer than expected, but the Universal Assistance Compact was approved by a significant majority. Humanity had successfully transformed their accidental influence into a formal system that would benefit everyone. 6 months later, Commander Zethkar stood in the gardens of New Geneva, watching human children play with young aliens from a dozen different species. The colony had become the first to fully implement compact protocols, serving as a model for how different species could live and work together. The refugee crisis that had once threatened to overwhelm human space had been resolved through coordinated assistance from multiple species. The Silthani had provided advanced recycling technology, the Thektar had contributed construction expertise, and the Healer caste had established medical facilities. What had once been a burden for humanity alone was now a shared responsibility that strengthened everyone involved. You have done something remarkable, Zethkar told President Santos during the ceremony, marking the Compact's first successful refugee resettlement program. You took your greatest advantage and gave it away to help others. Santos smiled as she watched the children playing. We didn't give it away, we shared it. And now instead of one species known for helping others, we have dozens of species learning to help each other. The Korth Coalition had largely dissolved as member species joined the Compact one by one. Even Councillor Vorth had grudgingly admitted that the new system was producing better results than the old competitive model. Trade was more stable, conflicts were resolved more quickly, and resources were distributed more efficiently. Dr. Vasquez published her final report on the gratitude cascade phenomenon, documenting how a simple act of kindness had transformed galactic civilization. Her conclusion became required reading in diplomatic schools across the galaxy. Humanity's greatest achievement was not gaining influence through kindness, but teaching the galaxy that true strength comes from lifting others up rather than holding them down. The humans had not become the dominant species they could have been. Instead, they had become something more valuable, the diplomatic heart of a galactic community that valued cooperation over competition. Their colonies served as neutral meeting grounds. Their diplomats mediated disputes, and their natural empathy made them ideal peacekeepers. As Zethkar prepared to return to Vrexian space, he reflected on the journey that had begun with his rescue in the empty void between stars. A simple act of human kindness had created ripples that reshaped the galaxy, proving that sometimes the smallest gestures could have the largest consequences. The humans had learned that their greatest strength was not their technology or their military might, but their capacity to care for others. And in sharing that strength with the galaxy, they had created something unprecedented, a civilization based on mutual aid rather than mutual competition. The universe was a better place because one small research ship had decided to help a stranded alien trader, asking nothing in return but the satisfaction of knowing they had done the right thing. And that, more than any military victory or technological breakthrough, was humanity's true gift to the galaxy.